work or they have some other meetings. But we have what we need because we have interested folks, engaged folks, and we're going to have some conversations. As I'm talking, those of us who are identified as table captains, I think we're going to probably have, what, 1, 2, 3, maybe 3 or 4 tables. We'll make sure that we populate our tables so that we get good dialogue, so there's not too many, not overpopulated, and some diverse mixture. Some of us are parents. We want parents talking to parents also, and other folks will bring certain perspectives. So when we break up into that first discussion group, we may reassign some folks and move people around. Please don't be offended. We want to make sure that we're creating the best dialogue that we can get. So first of all, thank you all for being here. And I spoke with some of you personally. Some of you saw it posted. Some of you have been partners with us, Communities of Care, for some time. And we know that we have a major situation, a major issue with underage alcohol consumption. And part of our mission is to reduce access of that substance to our kids. That's one of the most important things that we do, is we try to figure out ways to reduce the access, educate the community on the dangers of it, work with other parts of our community to have better conditions, better environment, better laws, better social norms. And so part of our discussion is around, especially with parents with kids like maybe 16, 17, that junior, senior year in high school. Some of them have transitioned into college or the workplace. They're, 19, 20 years old, still illegal, but very grown, very much adults, very much feeling like they can do what they want to do, how they want to do it. And they've had at least 16 years of model behavior from adults. They didn't make this stuff up. They didn't just land here. They got here, and how they got there is pretty clear. Alcohol is one of the major pieces that we use to celebrate everything. The only time we don't use alcohol maybe is at the baby shower, and only the mother-to-be doesn't drink. But alcohol has become a rite of passage. It has become how we celebrate sports, athletics. I was watching some statistics on some videos, and they were talking about how athletes in high school are more likely to drink than other kids. So alcohol and athletic culture go hand in hand. Tailgating is all about alcohol. And we have, Ohio State, go football, go Bucks. In Lorain County, in the state of Ohio, Friday night football is everything. We know that kids go to parties afterwards. Remember the BYOB? When I was in high school, it was posted, BYOB, and everyone knew what it meant. Every teacher, every parent, and we knew that household where we could go and have that party, and there'd be a keg there. So we've kind of created an atmosphere that has fostered some of this behavior. We want to talk about some anecdotes and some ways that we can alter that environment. So that's part of our challenge. Elaine Jorges, who is the executive director of the Addis Board, who's kind of our champion, our driver, she keeps us in line. Everybody who knows Elaine knows exactly what I'm talking about. She's going to share with us some facts about kids drinking. We have some facts from Lorain County, from our Pride survey. We have some facts from the health survey that was done. And we have some national data to put it into some context. Before she comes up, we're going to show a little video. It's called The Sound of Your Voice. And again, our purpose is to encourage, to empower parents to identify what part of the solution are we. What can we do to create a better environment for our kids and for our neighbors' kids? And I think this video will help us, and then that's going to be really the focus of our dialogue. So let's see if I can get this right. I should just be able to hit play.
Kids leaving for college hear the sound of their future. Believe it or not, they also hear the sound of your voice. And when it comes to underage drinking, that's a good thing. Yes, this new phase is epic. But your kid could also feel overwhelmed by academic expectations, social insecurities, and new responsibilities. Will they turn to alcohol to cope? Maybe. And then, every year, almost 600,000 college students are injured. More are assaulted. Hundreds of thousands have unprotected sex. Way too many suffer from worse. And consider this. About 25% of college students miss classes, fail exams, and fall behind because of drinking. It took a lot of time, a lot of money, and a lot of ambition to get here. Drinking can derail it all. But you still have this moment. You can protect your kid. Talking about underage drinking is a good idea, even if you think they've heard it all before. Because the future sounds a lot better with your voice in it.
Need a little help talking to your college-bound senior about underage drinking? Get more information at stopalcoholabuse.gov.
So yeah, this is from Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration. It's on. So, and that's a lot where a lot of these resources came from, back on the table. Any of that information, if it appeals to you, if you feel to take it, share it, with anyone that could benefit from it. As Tim said, I'm Elaine Jargis, the Executive Director of the Alcohol and Drug Addiction Services Board of Lorraine County, and we have Christine Robinson and Joy Soup from our board. She's our Director of Program Services with the board. So, wanted to share some data with you. In the middle of each table is just one set, and it looks like this. So, as I'm talking, you could share it around. There's one other set here we could give back to a larger group to share around. Kind of wanted to lay the land of kind of alcohol in the perspective of data. Back in 2014, we surveyed students in 11 high schools in grades 6, 8, and 10th. And then last year, through the Lorraine County Health Partners, which includes Lorraine County General Health District, of which Kat's here representing, our board, the Mental Health Board, the hospitals, both Mercy in EMH and the Elyria Health District at the time in the Metro Parks, undertook a survey, an adult health survey. And it's just interesting when you look at the alcohol data. The reason that we're here is also about prevention and trying to stem the tide of alcohol use later in life. So I don't have this data up here, so it's just here. The one tablet or group of tables that you'll see to share says Youth Trend Summary. And how it's written is by the report from our kids from grades 6, 8, and 10. And kind of in the middle, the third gray block that says alcohol consumption. You could see that 4% of our 6th graders reported having alcohol in the past year, going up to 19% for our 8th graders and up to 40% for our 10th graders. 2%, 10%, 22% current drinkers, again, of the students in those grades. And think about, okay, 6th grader, how old would a 6th grader be? 12, right? So thinking about that number. Anybody know a 12 or 12-year-old and thinking about that? Rode with someone who was drinking. Again, 8%, interesting, 15% and then 12%, the way that number blips. But again, the dangers of that even occurring in a young person's life. And drank and drove, those that were youth drivers, a small percent. But again, thinking about that in the data perspective. Before I jump back into the rest of the youth data, if you pull the piece that says adult summary, again, it's the 5th piece about alcohol consumption for adults. It's written between 2011 and 2015 and compared to Ohio. Lorraine County adults in 2011, 59% had had at least one alcoholic beverage in the past month, but more importantly on that age group of binge drinking and the dangers with that. Interesting, the rate of binge drinking for adults report went down into 15, but the at least drinking went up. So again, the steps of prevention, if we could, what we know now about addiction is a lot more than we did in even 2011. In 2011, addiction has become classified as a chronic disease, and they've classified it by the American Society of Addiction Medicine as a disease of the brain. What we know with our youth, from when we had the expert Dr. Lander here a couple times, The adolescent brain starts really forming at age 12 and doesn't fully form until age 25. And the last part of the brain to develop is this part, the prefrontal cortex, which is the decision-making and judgment pieces. So if we believe addiction is a brain disease, and if we're putting, substances into the developing brain, it can impact their decision-making and judgment from that age group. We also know from research from NIDA, which is the National Institute on Drug Abuse, that 8 out of 9 adults that have substance abuse or addiction in adulthood started using any illegal substance before age 18. And again, as Tim said, 21 is the legal limit for alcohol in our state. We didn't create that. We're not here to combat that. It is what it is. So knowing the data and alcohol being the largest substance, we've got to find a way to prevent that. I want to go back to the youth summary. You could see marijuana for our youth use being the next significant substance. And on our Pride data was also the cigarettes. And again, those are all illegal for those students. Flipping the page on this, you could see that, of our and I'll just go to the 8th graders. 19% of Lorraine County youth had alcohol in the past year. 10% were current drinkers, having had at least a drink at some time in the past 30 days, and the average age they started was 12. And most of the time they reported using it at home, friend's house, and other, which then goes to a community piece. That means they're getting it from somewhere. They might get it from the refrigerator of their own home, a friend's home, or there might be a store that's selling to them, or they can get it, or maybe an older sibling is buying it for them. And they're telling us this data. It's confidential survey. No kids are identified in this. So a few years ago, we sat down with a group of kids with their data, and they said, oh, this is a lot lower than reality. So we take this with a grain of lens to at least say it's occurring in our communities. We're not blind to it. We don't know the exact number. It's somewhere between here and our kids saying it's a lot higher. So we're here to stem that down. Youth indicated mostly that they used alcohol on weekends, 13%, limited 2% either after school on weeknights. So if you think about that, it's mostly happening on weekends, either at home or a friend's house. So again, as parents, as adult influencers in our community, we have a role to understand that. What might happen on weekends. We might go out, we might be relieved from our work week, so they might be left alone, or left to be at a friend's house and unsupervised. So, and then in the past 30 days, 15% of youth had ridden in a car driven by someone who had been drinking alcohol, and 1% had driven in a car themselves after drinking alcohol. And we know what the damage is to that. On the next page about availability of alcohol, I'm pointing to our 10th graders, 22%, and then 25% of the 10th graders reported alcohol to be either very easy or fairly easy to get. The younger ones, they didn't know where they couldn't get mostly, so that's a good thing, and so we've got to get that number higher for our older kids. The other piece we look at is their perception of risk, because again, as Tim said, they want to do good. It's called belief in the moral order, but if they, they want to model, see, or they want to look at, if they're having a good time and they're using this to either unwind or relax or just to have a good time, they might want to do that. The perceived risk of use is something that we look at also, and the alcohol piece, I saw this before and I meant to grab it. I think it's, this really isn't that one. It's on, and these aren't numbered because that county health assessment is really big, so it's not that we missed pages in copying, but 80% of our 6th graders reported their parents would feel it's very wrong for them to have 1 or 2 drinks. For 6th grade, it went down to 80% in the 8th grade, and then 72% of our 10th graders felt their parents would feel it's wrong for them to have 1 or 2 drinks. So again, you can see that number going down as they get older. So their parents are maybe a little more lax about it or not paying as much attention to that. So that's data that, again, we use to drive the work we do and the conversations we have. Their perceived risk on page 127 is better in a table. So again, and I'll just go to our 10th grade and you could share that, but perceiving risk of having 1 or 2 drinks of an alcoholic beverage nearly every day, 29% being of great risk, which again is good, but that means a big percent don't feel that to be a great risk for them. So the pieces with alcohol for our young people, again, is followed by that. And if you go to the adult side, there's just some other data to mine into that, again, we find to do prevention, we've got to start so that data doesn't keep going. We do map, where they're consumed. So as we're doing work, we might look in certain communities or bars and drinking establishment. Later we'll talk about like density and where it's available into communities. Because we know sometimes kids are cool, they'll go to another community to buy because they're not recognized or they don't know sell. And then the connection of driving activity. OVI enforcement, we've got our major freeways, and so there is a lot of enforcement that happens, and so you might see numbers trending that way, but that means people are caught drinking or other use while driving, which not only impacts maybe themselves, but somebody else just who happens to be on the road. And this was just interesting. You can see the OVI activity around the county. This was from 2015. I'll look at the map. So again, this is not immune from any community in our county at this point. But the good news overall, how do we look and how's the nation? The nation is showing overall that teen substance use is going down. So we've got to keep doing what we're doing to get that to continue. 10 years ago, we became smoke-free. It was a 10-year anniversary. So we're really good, and there were so many resources put into it to get that attention. And suddenly cigarette smoking is going up because we kind of took our eyes off that prize. So, there's a heroin epidemic here that we cannot discount at all. But we also have to pay attention to this, or those numbers at any point could flip the other way. So, we do need to celebrate, good news, and also even with our data with our kids. Any data that shows a percentage of use, and I'll just go back, 40% of our 10th graders had alcohol in the past year, that means 60% did not. So that's a good thing, and that's something we should, we've got prevention staff in the room and other staff that work with kids, and we've got to celebrate that too so we can keep that number going. So just kind of wanted to set the tone on some data. You've got also, I think each of you, we tried to hand out to you some facts about underage drinking, just specific about use, specific to adolescents, health and safety risks. And then we did, because we're talking about the college-age kids, whether or not they go to college or not, they're at that age. So there's just, again, some good thought-provoking information, and while we're processing today and getting into some discussions, take a quick read about that and kind of interject that in your thoughts so we can move forward. I'm going to turn it over to David. David's been around for a little while. He started with an intern with us, a couple years ago? A year ago. And just recently, we received a grant specific to the target population that we're talking about today. So he's kind of spearheading that on behalf of Lorraine County. So he's going to kind of guide us to our next steps.
Thank you. So this event is based on the World Cafe model, and what's really going to happen is we're going to have some table captains at each table, as Tim said, and they're going to help guide the conversation so that we can really kind of drill in to first what the community is responsible for in terms of how we're going to be able to combat this issue. How, and additionally, the who. So once we look at the what, and excuse me for a second. I apologize for that. I'm a little bit nervous, I have to admit. I'm not really big on public speaking, and this is my first event, so please bear with me. You know, I need a little minute to kind of get settled in. But, okay, so let me get back to the topic at hand. The first section is really looking at, you know, the what. So, what is our responsibility as a community? And who is responsible for each part of this? Because the reality is, this is a multifaceted issue. We all know that. So, really what we're going to do is we're going to have facilitators at each table that kind of guide the conversation, and perhaps we'll even be taking notes, so that not only can we as a coalition inform you, our community members, but also glean information from you as well, because the reality is we don't have all the answers. That's why we're here today. And one thing that often happens in conversations like this is we recognize the fact that we can get innovative prevention-focused strategies from the community, from people who may not be as familiar with the language around this as we are. But that's why we're here today. And so if you look at the menu that was created, unfortunately there's not really food items on it, there's actually an agenda, but we were trying to keep a cafe style. You'll see that after this first discussion section, we'll come back and we'll inform you on another issue, which is environmental strategies. From there, we'll also have another discussion session, and then the dessert, which is the recap. We'll all talk and try to figure out best methods to improve our community as a whole.
How about a hand for David? Come on. Everybody knows there's a first time, right? You did great. You did great. So we're going to break up. Your lens, your experience is very important in this conversation. Your parents, you once were teenagers, you've experienced this, so in the sharing, think about that. We know that there's a responsibility for we as parents. Sometimes I'm the community, and I want to look at it from the community lens. Sometimes I've got to look at it at, I am Lindsay, Ellis, and Jasmine's dad, and what is my role as a parent? Not as a community servant, not as a school board member, not as a community activist. It's what is my role as a parent, right? Some of us happen to be, we own a store, we work at a store. What is our role there? There are lots of roles that that'll kind of cross and mesh and crisscross. So in our conversations, allow your experience to be part of it. Because some things we have to challenge ourselves a little bit more on, because we got away with it. We drank and we survived. They aren't always surviving. So let's really challenge ourselves. Let's get into some deep conversation. Who are our captains? And see, how should we do this? How should we break it? Should we do it in 3 groups or 4 groups?
We should break one table up. Yeah, the 3 of you could join.
Yeah, that'll be perfect.
Split here and here, we have 3 tables.
Great, so we'll have Donna, captain of table, Darren, captain of table, and you've been assigned. Naomi. Okay, so those are 3 captains. Darren will come up. Darren, you come to this one here? Or Donna can come here, perfect. Oh, he's already there, yeah. So, and we'll be walking around, those of us who kind of have a little bit more idea of what we're doing, and just kind of listening in, and if we need to coach at all, we will. And if somebody wants...
So as you're asking the questions, we could help with writing answers, so we could get input. So the 2 questions we're going through now is what should communities do to address underage drinking, and who's responsible for which pieces.
Okay.
Okay? Is that right?
Those are kind of props.
Okay, right? students